Just to alert our sensitive viewers, this episode may contain a bit of coarse language.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christy Blumendahl.
And my name is Rocco Catroni. And we are the Disability Tangent Podcast.
Each episode, we talk about current issues affecting communities while supporting people with disabilities.
Through research, community connections, and resource sharing, we hope to invite everybody to challenge their perceptions of people with disabilities and promote a more inclusive world.
Defined by what the people actually want and not what others think they want.
Come join us on this journey. Exactly. Living is a symptom.
Living.
Aha! Quote number 2.
We're just going to have an episode of quotes
just
today.
Quotes.
We're just going to say a bunch of quotes.
This is the quote episode. Welcome.
It's not the quote episode. It's the holiday episode.
So there are so many holidays, and just wanted to acknowledge the diversity of holidays celebrated at this time of year. So Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Diwali, winter solstice, New Year's, everything. There's so many times. So we're non-denominational holiday season people.
Yes, we approve of whatever holiday you choose to celebrate or not celebrate, because we have non-celebrators probably listening. I have non-celebrators in my life, and I appreciate and love you. And sometimes not celebrating is a beautiful, beautiful gift to yourself as well.
Absolutely.
So if you are one of those and you are taking today to just sit and not celebrate, and that's why you're listening to the podcast, hallelujah.
Or maybe a different
something
word.
else.
Good on ya. Good. Oh my God. Well, so, in today's episode, we're going to hear from a couple different people that have sound bites, and we have a few things that we wanted to read, and Christy and I are going to share some of our own thoughts. So just kind of a reflection on this time of year as we come to year end, if we don't want to call it holiday season, we're coming to year end, and the various highs and lows. And we'll share some of our own stories as we kind of go throughout this time too. So for folks listening, if you have your own holiday story, let us know. Shoot us a comment, shoot us an email. We'd love to hear more about how you celebrate this time of year, or how you not celebrate, or how you just life this time of year. Push record and hope life still works.
You push record. See if life still works.
Christy, how does this time of year feel for you? Like, what are some of those, kind of things that pop up for you as we think of this?
We're starting there, huh?
Or not. We're getting deep. We're going.
It's an interesting time for me. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that comes up for me. I have some warm and happy memories of things that happen this time of year. I have some positive things that happen this time of year. I also have a lot of not great things that come up for me. And
for sure.
It's an interesting thing because I tend to prolong the season of celebration. And that is a thing that I have done for, I don't even know how many years, 7, 8, maybe even 9 years now. I'm not positive, but my daughter Raven and we started a holiday one year because we were both we were depressed. We both suffer from sort of seasonal affective disorder. When the sun goes away, as it does, especially in Chicago.
Yes. Starting at 4 p.m.
4 p.m. It's just dark, and it's just suddenly feels very dreary, and things are not, it just doesn't feel like a positive time. And so one year we were purchasing an artificial Christmas tree before the season started, and it arrived, and we were like, we should see if it's good, if we want to return it or keep it. And we decided it was good and we were going to keep it. And then we decided, let's just decorate it. So we did, and we sort of inadvertently created a holiday in mid-October, and so we've celebrated it ever since. And we put up the tree, we decorate, we celebrate in this odd fashion. We call it Chrisoween because it's half Christmas and half Halloween. We
That's
watched
cool.
the Tim Burton film Nightmare Before Christmas because it has
Yep.
both of those holidays in it. And we put up Christmas decorations, but we celebrate with occult-esque things like, incense and tarot cards and crystals are the gifts that we give to one another. And so it becomes this sort of like mashup of the holidays. And it's just a really nice thing because it's something that only the two of us have shared for a very long time. We are slowly gaining. There's now about 4 or 5 people that get in on the festivities. So maybe in 35 years, we'll actually have, 12 of us.
We'll have as many as 12 worldwide.
But it's just really nice to just say, you know what, I need a celebration here and I'm going to create one. So it's been something that's become important to us and something that we do together. And yeah, it brings a lot of joy.
Yeah, that's really great. And I like the kind of creating your own special time with that, right? And I think Chrisoween's a really good way to do that, especially, it's like I want the vibe of Nightmare Before Christmas, but actually, and I think that's fantastic.
How about you, Rocco? What is your sort of like sense around the holidays? Like what comes up for you?
I think a few different things similar to you. I have some good, warm, happy memories, and I have some not so good memories. I feel like when I was younger, this time was awesome, especially when my grandpa was still around. He was very much the kind of the linchpin in the whole family. And, that was a very nice time. A lot of like my best memories as a kid were around that time of year, like honestly, between Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. It was just, we were always over at family's house and all the cousins got together and we were just kind of shooting the shit. And we used to play this thing called Dirty Bingo. And I promise this is appropriate. Basically, you had 2 decks of cards, and one deck of card was like the bingo deck, and the other deck, however many people were there, you'd pass out the cards, and you'd have all these like kind of like white elephant prizes in the middle, right? So stuff around your house, random things you found at the dollar store. One year we all made something, which was kind of funny. My sister wrapped a holiday bag in a holiday bag because she thought it was funny. And it was funny. But so you call the number, you grab a prize from the middle, and when all the prizes are gone in the middle, so like let's say there's 15 people there's only 7 prizes. There's 15 prizes in the middle. So everybody walks away with a prize, but you can like take from other people, right? Because you go through the whole deck. So it just like you trade with the other person, and it's kind of like a like some kind of exchange thing, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I feel like my feels around the season kind of waned for many years after my grandpa passed, and then now that I have kids again, I'm starting to feel the vibe again because they're excited, and I think that's something that's slowly kindling the cold, dead part of myself that, is slowly unlocking that memory of like, oh yeah, I used to like this time of year. Cool. Okay. So it's starting to be a little rejuvenating for me. So
yeah, I think, just an acknowledgement, it can be a really hard time of year for a lot of people. And I think, for me, absolutely can be a really hard time of year. My family situation isn't always great, and travel is not always great for me as a person with multiple disabilities, and it can be really, really stressful. The holidays are stressful, I think, for everyone, and I think especially for those of us that have different identities, things that don't connect always with our family of origin, or just disabilities. It can be a lot of extra added stress on top of the maybe quote unquote normal amount of holiday stress. So I do think that it can be a really challenging time for a lot of people. And so obviously we want to acknowledge that. Yeah, I think for me, growing up, it seemed quite fun. I think there's something about childhood and holiday celebrations that kind of go together in this very sort of like
The
innocent,
rose-colored veneer.
joyful, yes, exactly,
Yeah.
kind of way. With my own
Mhm.
daughter growing up and with my niece and nephew, I remember like we would have these holiday cookie decorating contests where, we would have all the little cutout sugar cookies, but then all the icing and the little toppings and then we would set them down at the table, and then of course we would participate as well and all decorate the cookies and see who had made the best little ginger person or whatever, or tree or whatever we were decorating, and who had the best frosting technique, which of course it was never the adults, it was always the children for some reason who had the best decorating technique, which
Like,
made very little
literally,
sense to
or-
me. Like,
yeah.
no, never literally, always in some sort of way. Well, that's not entirely true. My nephew is an exceptional artist, and so is my niece. And sorry, daughter, you are also an exceptional artist in your own ways.
Maybe not with icing.
Actually, she's great with cakes. She does
Hey.
excellent cakes. But it was always one of those things where you could get everybody around the table for a short amount of time and create joy. But then there was always a lot of drama and trauma that would come up around the table as well. So that can be a challenging thing. People often talk about Thanksgiving, and that's a rather more American. Well, they have it in Canada too. There are other places that have it, but I think it's a rather more American thing for us to talk about it in this way, where like we sit around the table and argue.
I mean, sorry, give thanks. And especially for, holidays that were about the appropriation of a people.
Yeah, that's right.
And a country and a space. So that's becomes difficult. Yeah.
So I understand there's a lot that we could unpack around it, but I feel like for me, becoming a person who's chronically ill and chronically tired, like that is also a thing that has been a challenge for me, because the holidays seem to be a time when people want to go, do, go. And that is not a thing that my body does any longer, or my brain. Those are just not ways that I can function. And so that becomes extremely challenging for me. And then I often feel like I'm the person who's like complaining or making things difficult or creating problems. And so it's been a real challenge for me to just understand that I'm not happy in that situation. And so the last several years now, I've just been like, you know what, I'm going to stay home, or I'm going to set these boundaries around how I'm going to interact. And other people are just going to have to understand this is how my life is, and this is how I function. And I'm not going to step into dysfunction, and I'm not going to do things that harm me in order for you to feel, I don't know, pleased with how this holiday looks. And so that's
fit
been
whatever concept people have of what it should be this time of year. And
and it took me a really long time to navigate that. And I made a lot of people angry, and I've hurt myself a lot in that process, and hurt them in that process, because I would try to push myself, and then it would become too much, and then I would become angry, and then it would become, conflict. And then when I got home, I was miserable. And so it was really not a positive situation at all. And so I think it's been a lot better sort of stepping into my own identity and being like, you know what, as a disabled person, this is not a possibility for me. And if other people are not accepting and understanding of me as I am, then that's not where I need to be. And it's not that people are mean about it or terrible about it. They just don't have a concept always of like what I need and how that doesn't match up with what they desire. And so I need to be the person who oftentimes stands up and says, hey, I can't do that, and so I'm not going to show up. Our environments are not built for us as disabled humans. And so we have to kind of state, like, this is the environment that I will or won't succeed in. And if I won't succeed in that environment, then I can't go. So.
And I know you and I have had a bunch of conversations about this in general of like, when does that, masking might not be the word I want to use with that, but when does boundary setting stop being labeled as boundary setting by other people? And then when is it seen as like, well, this person's just being mean or they're being whatever. And I mean, anecdotally, it does kind of feel like if the other person feels like they've been wronged by your boundary setting, then it's like, well, this is terrible. And you're like, no, I'm setting boundary. Like, I'm not saying this out of spite or anger, or I'm saying, here's the number of spoons this requires me to do. It's 15. I'm telling you, I have 6.5 on a good day. This isn't going to be a thing for me. And, you know, I love you all over there. It's okay. But we're gonna change that up a little bit. And I think that gets complicated from a social perspective for sure. And I imagine that kind of is, I mean, it's almost like seclusion and segregation by expectation of others. And that's a hard field to navigate around in a way that still makes sense for you.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting thing too, because, you know, we talk about loneliness and people will say, oh, we have an epidemic of loneliness in our society. And I think like that may or may not be true, but it is true that people with disabilities often report, you know, higher incidence of loneliness than people that don't have disabilities. And I think that is definitely the case in part because they don't have environments that are inclusive in those ways, right?
Exactly.
Because your boundaries are not respected, you end up not going into those environments. And I think, like, you know, one of the things that I'm learning is that it has nothing to do with me how someone else feels about my boundary, right? Like, that's their stuff. That's not my stuff.
Exactly.
If I set a boundary and you feel some kind of way about it, those are your feelings to deal with. That's not my stuff, right? I set the boundary to protect me, and how you feel about my boundary is about you, not about me. And so I think that that's one thing that is a hard learned lesson, especially because many of us were socialized in these ways that had some sense of manipulation or some guilt or some shame associated with them, right? And so your default is kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, I made you feel a way. That must be me, right? But it's not necessarily us, right? If we haven't been taught how to stand with a firm boundary, then it feels unsettling. But
agreed.
Those boundaries are protective on both sides. It's not that like I set a boundary and it harms you.
Yes.
Any more than it harms me, right? It's good for both of us to know where the line is, right? So I feel like boundaries can be very positive things. And I feel like sometimes we need to acknowledge that. I think I lost my train of thought a little bit. I got stuck on the boundaries piece. My brain followed the thing and then I lost where I was going.
Follow the dopamine and the dopamine led me astray.
I know! Damn it!
Damn it!
Dead end track!
But I mean, to kind of, you know, I think it's that, you know, it started with that other people's perceptions of your boundary, and that's not your feeling, that's their feeling. It kind of reminds me of that. And I feel like this is a theme that's kind of naturally coming up in this episode now of how are things like perspective taking and empathy being taught, where it's, oh, you have to think of other people, but then it always becomes about like, well, how do your actions affect other people? And it's like, yes, cool. That works when everybody's thinking that way. Not like you person have to always think about what other people are doing, but they don't have to respond to you in that same way, or they don't have to have that same expectation. of having that same level of perspective taking too. So then again, all of the work is put on the person that's, like marginalized in that situation, or seen as younger, or seen as different, or seen as able, disabled, seen as different colored skin or different religion or things like that. And I think that becomes a very complicated feel around that, right? I mean, this goes back to my adult kindergarten, Christy. Like did we forget about the perspective taking skills?
We did. And I think that's where I was going. You brought me back to it a little bit, because I started off with like people with disabilities say that they're lonely more often than the general public. And I think part of that is that like we recognize that those environments are hostile environments. And so we stay out of them, right? We stay out of them. But
Exactly.
I do think, right, that perspective taking is important, because how are you going to create an environment that is not hostile unless you start looking at like, well, what would it feel like to be in my shoes, right?
Yeah.
Or in my chair, or in my whatever my situation is, right? And so I feel like that is part of the point, is that it shouldn't always be my responsibility to be constantly stating, like, no, that doesn't work for me. No, that doesn't work for me. No, that doesn't work for me.
Exactly.
Because if people care about me and love me, then consideration for my needs should be a thing that they are doing. And I don't love shoulds, but it is a thing that, I mean, if you love a person, you consider their needs. That's, I believe, one of the things that love entails.
Yeah, like you don't have to completely 100% bend down and completely sacrifice yourself for that, but when you are making decisions, at least this is how I'm interpreting this, like when you are making decisions, that is information that directly impacts how you make decisions, but not necessarily the only factor to make decisions, where it's like, you need this time, space, whatever. I need this time, space, whatever. All right, cool. Where are we meeting now? In how this functions. Yeah. Pumpernickel, right? What's the safe word?
No one knows what that means, but that was great. I love that you threw that in there. They're like, what the fuck is he yelling pumpernickel for? What does that have to do with anything? Pumpernickel.
That's a deep cut. But is there like a term or a thing or something to, kind of signal that safety that people may need in that moment or whatever? Yeah.
At what point do you stop and think about someone else and what space they need? Yeah.
And I think that's something that is kind of socialized a lot at this time of year across many different religious backgrounds, but also just a lot of humaning in different communities, where it is a time of reflection at the year end here too, as you kind of go into a new year. If this is your new year, by the way, not everybody.
Yes, not everyone shares
the
new year. Yes, correct.
Exactly. But any transition, I guess I'm speaking to with that, where it's okay, we're kind of starting anew into this place. How did this past year go? Who can I help? Who did I hurt? Who hurt me? Who helped me? And it kind of seems like a big journal done over cranberry sauce or something at the dinner table, and some arguments and oddly named family games. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe some cookies.
I hope so. Yeah. I don't know. So, I mean, at this kind of juncture in the episode, I mean, do we want to listen to some other people's thoughts around this? We have a few folks that we had some recordings from and an interview that we did with the wonderful Nicholas Aether.
I love so many things that you do, and I feel like we could talk for ages and ages about all of the things that you just described, but I find it intriguing that the thing that we are going to potentially focus on today is the one identifier, which is Wiccan.
Yeah, and especially since we're
out of all of that.
So since we're doing a holiday episode, we wanted to focus on that and see how that relates, especially to disability for us as well.
Yeah, disability, inclusion, and Wicca and paganism, and how does that come together? And so it's an interesting thing because I share that in common with you, the celebration of the Wheel of the Year, and I feel like that's one of the things that I've loved about connecting with you is being like, oh, you know, happy this, happy that, blessings on this. And having these like days that we share has been kind of fascinating. So, um, yeah, would you share a little bit about the Wheel of the Year, what this means, and how you sort of got started on the path of celebrating in that way?
Oh my. Okay. I suppose there's kind of that's twofold question. So I'll start with the Wheel of the Year. I found Wicca because I was trying to seek something that made sense to me, that reflected my lived experiences and that reflected the world around me. So the Wheel of the Year is really an emphasis on kind of the interplay between masculine and feminine, and really looking more at the supposed lifespan of the masculine, and recognizing, of course, that the masculine would only exist through the feminine. So we have celebrations each month for the feminine. We call those spots, and those happen during the full moon. And then we also have 8 holidays that are called sabbats. And the sabbats, or sabbats, depending on who you're talking to, some call it sabbat, some call it sabbat. They are to celebrate the masculine side. And we look at the lifespan of the feminine as a cycle that renews monthly, with the flow of the moon's cycles. So we have maiden during the waxing moon, we have mother during and around the full moon, and we have crone during the waning and the time where we have the new or non-existing moon, which we would call the day before that the dark of the moon. With the sabbats, what we're looking at is the lifespan of a masculine side of the universe over the course of the year, as seen through the sun and its connection to the crops. The crops are of the earth and of the soil. They are supposed to be of the goddess, but they are fed by the sun, and the sun is supposed to be the god. And thus, across the Wheel of the Year, we see the god aging. So born in December on the winter solstice, which is going to be right around the time that Christians have appropriated to be the birth of Christ. All the way through, we see this young, wild, feral kind of boy, man, beast, child, growing into these masculine energies, untamed, really only tamed by the beauty of the goddess. And throughout the year, he also develops a relationship with the land and with the animals. And so we honor that connection that we have to the land and the animals through him. And so we celebrate on these 8 different days of the year, all the way through to where our God, which interestingly in Wicca is a very abstract concept that can mean lots of different things and is not looked at as a single deity. At this point, we recognize that the earth, every year it renews itself. Every year the earth shuts down, it dies. Every year it is reborn. And so we have the cutting of the crops, which happens in August. And so we have Lugnasad and we have Mabon, which are 2 different holidays that kind of celebrate the harvest and the dying of the earth. We look at that as self-sacrifice of the masculine, so that it can be reborn. On Samhain, which is what most people would call Halloween, that is the night where the masculine energy, the god, comes back through the veil and brings the dead with him. And so during that night, we get to honor those who have passed recently. Last year, we honored my dog and my cat who had both passed about 2 months apart. It was like really, really hard. So a nice, beautiful way to kind of welcome them home. We set a table for them and set out a feast. This year, we'll be doing it for my grandmother. And then we move back on in through towards Yule, where, again, the sun is reborn on the winter solstice. I would say that is the easiest way that I can describe the Wheel of the Year. So the turning of the wheel represents the natural cycle of the seasons. and the way that the earth interacts with the sun. I was looking for something that acknowledged masculine and feminine as equal, something that acknowledged that masculine and feminine could flow in and through each other, because I was having experiences where we didn't have language for it at the time, but I was non binary. This was when I was in middle school, and I knew something was different. I also knew that I was attracted to men, and in my previous religion, this was a big no-no, and I needed something that was going to look at experiences, natural experiences, from a natural standpoint. And so when I found that in the context of many pagan traditions, homosexuality is not looked down on, it's actually looked at as a reverence for a specific portion of the masculine, feminine, and any orientation. And so somebody who is, say, pan-romantic or pansexual, they would then have that orientation across that spectrum. There's a kind of an interesting element to pansexuality where I look at it and I don't identify as pansexual, but I think of it very much from my Wiccan standpoint as like, wow, like that is true reverence. Like pansexuality is actually like, it's not something I'm trying to shape myself into, but it is something that I kind of see as like almost an ideal. Like it's a way of really being able to revere and look past specifics and see the beauty, the interplay of any masculine and feminine.
That's a really beautiful expression, and I feel like very much. That was so much. I appreciate it a lot because I feel like that gives our listeners so much to kind of like latch onto and understand in ways that they may not have before. I think that was a really good kind of expression of what the wheel means and how that ties in. And I also think that you really led into, one of the reasons we wanted to discuss this, which is we wanted to talk about inclusivity at this holiday time. And I feel like this is such a good expression of inclusivity in the context of what often comes up at this time of the year, which is religion often comes up at this time of year, and family comes up at this time of year. And so I think that is really, I love the way that you kind of like expressed that you needed something more, something that represented you, something that was inclusive of you, and that you went out and that you sought it and that you found it in this expression. So that's a really beautiful sort of experience, and thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that you're giving space for this type of a discussion. I'll be honest, I've been on quite a few podcasts. No one's ever asked about Wicca. So
I love that we are the first. That makes me feel great. So
well, and I mean, like Christy said, it's that I really appreciate the ideology of just the reverence of these situations and people and kind of that flexibility and fluidity of it, of enjoying what's around, enjoying the people and the company that you seek. And I do really greatly enjoy that it was, like Christy said, you came at it on your own. And I think that makes it even more special for a lot of folks, as, I've talked pretty freely about having permanent Catholic damage. And Christy and I have many conversations around that. And, I don't mean to say that just because there's many people that works for, but it's not me. But I think finding that, I hope we can all have our own journeys to be able to search. So that's wonderful.
Hello, my name is Isaac and I am the new editor of the Disability Tangent podcast. And I am doing a bit of a special appearance because I can just imagine Rocco and Christy are currently laughing away at something that's really tickled their bones. So I'm here, firstly, to share what the holidays mean to me. So growing up, I was one of those children who couldn't wait for Christmas to come by every single year. I would do the countdown leading up to Christmas, and also I would want to be opening up my presents at least 2 weeks before we were allowed to, basically. My mum, being mum, made sure they were hidden away, and I was like, "Oh, come on, I want to open my presents." So yeah, so growing up, that's how it was, and also for me, Christmas was about the food. I mean, I got to be honest, I do like myself some Brussels sprouts. I do like my greens. I like the family gathering and just the celebration of being together. And of course, Santa was the highlight of, well, the stocking that Santa used to put at the end of my bed. Um, so, yes, how he filled up my presents with how he put presents in my stockings. So it was, a really exciting time. I grew up in a church where I was part of the nativity and following Jesus's story. So there was a lot to learn from that. But when it came to Christmas, even though I did grow up in the church, Christmas was Santa, the Brussels sprouts, the celebration, the Christmas tree, and that was my main focus on Christmas. And then one year, a series of unfortunate events where I can't remember what year it was, but my laptop ended up breaking. My iPod, I mean, this is showing my age, my iPod wasn't working, and my PlayStation, something I was really into, decided to break down. And I thought, wow, if this can't be Christmas when everything's breaking down. Then it was at least a year or 2 years later in the in London. We have a huge park called Hyde Park, and there every year there's a Christmas market, German Christmas market called Winter Wonderland. Went there with my friend one year, going around exploring, and a guy wasn't looking where he was going and ended up falling right into me and damaging my foot, which meant firstly, it was a lot, it was very painful. And secondly, I was in a hospital New Year's Eve, and I thought, oh gosh, I really don't like celebrations. Like, it really kind of triggered something in my mind to not really like celebrations as much. And then to put the cherry on top, the year later, after that, same foot, my sister accidentally ended up injuring my foot. And after that, I just really was not fond of Christmas. After that, I just really didn't feel the countdown, the celebration. And it wasn't like I was the Scrooge or anything, because I do believe everyone should enjoy Christmas or any sort of celebration, but I just wasn't. I wasn't really in the right headspace to really want to enjoy it. So I just thought, oh, it's just another day. And then for about 2, 3 years, I would work during the Christmas break. One year I worked literally the 2 week break because I thought, oh, since everyone else is off, I can catch up on work myself. And yeah, I regretted doing that because when everyone came back to work, I was like, oh, actually, I didn't take a break, did I? So that wasn't very good. But since then, and going through my mental health journey alongside this, I feel like I'm in a different place now, learning through my journey and knowing now that I can get myself out of it. And I would say that the past two Christmases, especially the one last year, I was in the moment. I took time to rest, but also I was forced upon rest because I went to my sisters who make sure that I do not work. Also, it was something that I wanted to do, and I thought that was very good. And yeah, I've just been on the journey of and I'm a lot better now that it's nice to be in the moment, be surrounded by good people. And even though I'm not someone who gets excited for it, I'm definitely in the moment and really to take the time to be there with loved ones and friends and family, which is always nice. And it's one of those things that I should really treasure more, because you know there may be a time where it won't be the same as it always has been. and I don't want to have any regrets around celebrations and being there for people. So it's definitely a journey. It's not an end destination, and I feel every day I'm getting more and more grateful for it. So, with that being said, that's my take on the holidays. We're now going to hear from Robin Arnall, perspective on the holidays as an autistic individual and why it's essential to acknowledge different needs. So, with that, thank you. And to Rocco and Christy, you're probably still laughing, but thank you for the opportunity to be here and share my lived experience with the holidays.
Hi everyone, this is Robin Arnall, and I was on a previous episode of the Disability Tangent podcast. The holidays for me are a difficult time, partly in the fact that I do not have consistency with family. I've also learned later in life as an autistic individual that I don't really like celebrating specific holidays, and so I've just chosen to omit them completely. However, I respect everybody else's choices and different cultural considerations to celebrate holidays the way they see fit. I guess around this time of year, I just like to emphasize that if what you're doing doesn't serve your needs, or you're finding that it actually takes away from your needs, then it may be worth reconsidering how you're doing those things and if it's valuable to you to even do them in the first place. Case in point, I hate surprises. I hate having to go through the social expectation of receiving gifts, picking out the perfect gift, the consumerism associated with it, and sometimes family gatherings with aversive opinions that differ from my own are very challenging and they can drain me. So I just offer this up as maybe an alternative perspective to the holidays. But if you engage in any sort of holiday gatherings or events, I hope that they go wonderfully for you.
Are you passionate about accessibility and inclusion, but don't know who to connect with? We welcome you to join the Global Accessibility and Inclusion Network, founded by the creators of the Disability Tangent podcast.
Our mission is simple: to connect communities to available resources and create a supportive network of individuals from all backgrounds. Join us as we unite disability advocates from around the world to share knowledge, collaborate on initiatives, and drive positive change.
Whether you're an experienced activist or just starting your journey, there's a place for you in our network. To learn more and become part of this powerful movement, check out the show notes for this episode and sign up today. Together, let's make the world a more accessible and inclusive place for everyone. Suzannah Weiss, who was in 2 episodes with us on sex on the spectrum, wherever sex is.
I think that's that argument of sex and the city or sex in the city. Maybe this is another.
It's a Berenstein Bears moment. Is that what it is? Is it one
Mandela
of those?
effect.
It's the Mandela effect is happening right now. Yes. Susanna, who was with us for 2 episodes and had so much fabulosity for us, actually gave us a little bit of a quote about tradition that she has that she sometimes does over the holidays. Rocco, do you want to express?
Absolutely. Alrighty, so this is a direct quote, so I'm reading word for word. Susanna says, I do have a tradition, not specifically a holiday tradition, but it applies to the holidays, that when I have food, I'm not going to eat that's left over from a party, or I just bought more groceries and then I'll eat before they expire, or something I don't like. I take it down in a grocery bag to the area of my neighborhood where there are homeless encampments and either hand it to someone or, if no one is out, leave it right outside the encampments. I'd suppose that is inclusive because it's in the spirit of helping others without being religion specific, and it's a way to give back that doesn't require a lot of effort or money or time. And that was Susanna's quote. I really like this, and I think that's another piece of that, what we're trying to do as a podcast too is building that community piece, and I think this is an example of that, where we say, okay, I have this extra thing. I'm not making a big deal about this. We're going down. We're providing this to other people, and then we go about our day. People go about their day, and people use it on here. It's not like there's this show of, oh, look what I'm doing, it's happening, that I think happens a lot in our society. The kind of posture, that kindness and whatever, so that other people see it. But just, you do good, you go back home. And I mean, Christy, it reminds me of the person that you gave shoes to recently.
Yes, because I mean, I feel like it's just a thing that I did because I did it. It was a person who needed shoes. Mm-hmm. I had shoes, or boots, actually, winter boots to give. I had thought about giving them to maybe refugees or, you know, someone who just would not have had that winter gear. And mm-hmm. I ended up talking to a woman who lives outside, and I had said, hey, what size are your feet? A
normal conversation starter.
Like, I don't know, we were just chatting, and I said, what size are your feet? And it was really a intriguing moment because, like, she looked down at her feet, and then I looked down at her feet, and she was wearing these, like, massive old white high tops that clearly did not fit her feet. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, ridiculous of a question. Who cares what size your feet are when you don't have shoes? You just wear whatever shoes you can find, right? And so, but it turns out that she was like, oh, I wear the 7.5, 8 shoe size. And so I had 2 sets of winter boots literally sitting by the door that I was going to get rid of. And I said, are you going to be here? And she said, yeah. And I said, I'll be right back. And so because I was walking the dog, I brought the dog back home, and I grabbed the boots and I brought them to her. And now I've seen her around the neighborhood in the boots, and it just is nice because I know that she has warm, dry feet, which is not an easy thing this time of year here. And so that is really great. And she was so grateful. And it just is not a thing that I felt like, right, I didn't need to be holding a sign saying, like, look at the thing that I did. I feel a little weird saying now, look at the thing that I did, because I'm like, does that negate the thing? Because I'm telling the story.
Are we doing this in a public space?
Oh my God. No, but I feel like that's just how I've always lived my life, because I've been on the other side of that equation, right? I've been in a space where I didn't have a home. I was living out of my car, or like living on other people's sofas, and like I didn't have a place to live, and I didn't have the things that I needed, and I still oftentimes don't have the things that I need, and I don't want to be someone else's charity case. Or someone else's, like, oh, look at me, I did a good job, pat me on the back, right? Like, I'm not here for you to feel better about yourself. I am a human who is equal to you in value, worth, you know, humanity, all of the things.
Exactly.
And so it seems really odd to me that people then sort of go out of their way to be like, look at me, I'm doing good things. And it's such a small thing, right? To be like, I don't need this, I'm getting rid of it. But then for someone else, it can be so important. It can be such a big thing. I have a neighbor who noted that I was looking for an aide. This neighbor said, hey, I cook for myself a couple times a week. Can I just make extra and then like holler and then you can come and get it? And I was like, fuck yes.
Yes,
please. Like, like, that helps me so much.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just like, they are cooking dinner. They could make a little bit extra dinner, and then I also can have dinner. And I was like, oh my God, like that was the best thing. That helps me so much. And it's such a small thing on one side of that equation, but it's such a big thing for me. And I'm so appreciative of that. So I'm like, why would we withhold our generosity or our or even things, you know, like why do we withhold things from other people? It just doesn't, it's nonsense to me. And I feel like before we started recording, Rocco, you and I were talking about like this mentality of like do disabled people even deserve to
Mm-hmm.
have help? Like, what would be the difference between Christy being at home on her sofa or Christy being out in the community? As though, like, I don't have anything to offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a fundamental problem, is that
Absolutely.
we're like, well, this is mine, and what good does it do for me to give mine to you? Or why do you deserve it when it's mine, right? As though, like, there's some sort of hierarchical structure, and some people deserve some and some people deserve none. Or
Exactly.
or maybe we all deserve some, but I deserve more.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's ownership, right? And I think that goes to everything of, like, you know, how did you achieve that item, and things I feel like in our society tend to be weighed heavier when they were quote unquote worked for, but that worked piece is so narrowly defined.
Yeah.
I feel like in our culture where it's like, you know, one, are we not able to, and I hate to say the word just, because you know how I feel about that, but are we not able to just share the extra things we have, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, take the meal thing, for example, where, okay, the extra 5 minutes or $3 worth of stuff that someone did saved someone else extra time of planning, prepping, eating, cleaning, you know, putting all those pieces together, and it's done now. And
Yeah.
For what? Like, the investment on one end is much smaller than it would have been if that same level of work was done somewhere else. Why is that the thing that people are picking apart and saying, like, well, I don't want to do extra work at all? And it's like, we do extra work all the time for dumb reasons.
Yeah.
We could just do extra work for good reasons.
Right? Yeah. And it's ridiculous because, right, it's mine and you can't have it. And why can't you have it? Well, because I don't want you to have it, because it's like, it's a circular thing also. It doesn't make any sense. I recently had a thing, you know, because they've started charging an extra amount to people's utilities, because there's now, in Chicago law, there's now funds that are going to low-income families to help pay their utilities. And so the people who are not low income, who have higher incomes, have to pay a percentage that's a tiny fee that's tacked on now to your bill. So based on how much you pay in gas for your heating, then you have to pay a little bit in order to help all of the low income families. And it's based on the percentage that you make, and you have to fill out a thing, and you have to, like, it's not like
it's a lot of work to
it's
get
a
to that
vetted
point.
process. Yes, it's a highly vetted process. You have to turn in your social security number. You have to, like, give your income, all of this stuff. You have to go and apply. It's a difficult process. But once you do that, then this small amount that's being tacked onto people's bill is going to help those families so that they have heating. And
Absolutely.
and I saw, like, people talking about it in this online forum, and then this one person was like, what's this amount that's being taken out here for again? And then someone says, oh, that's so that poor people can have heat. It's fucking disgusting.
What?
And I was like, what?
What?
And then some other guy says, excuse me, it's like the cost of a latte. He's like, I'm sorry, like, I am willing to pay the cost of a latte
so someone else,
so that other people don't die of exposure.
Exactly.
And then, like, this other guy was like, mine wasn't the cost of a latte. I had to pay like $57. And then someone else was like, how many properties do you own? because
I feel like maybe you're not having the problem.
Right? Like, this is not a conversation that you deserve to be in, even, buddy.
Exactly.
Like, how many gas bills are you paying on? Like, it was like a whole discussion where it was like, you know, someone doesn't want to pay $5 for people, and then someone else is like, oh, I own like 108 properties, clearly, because I have to
Exactly.
pay this percentage, and it comes out to $57.
Exactly.
And I'm sitting here going, well, thanks for paying my heat, y'all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I mean, I can't say guarantee, but I would strongly suggest that those might be the same people that also have a gym membership they're not using right now, or a Netflix account that just got pushed up, or, so I think that, when it's building that community piece, it doesn't have to be these big, huge, grand gestures. It's, community of support, of making people feel like they belong in the community by doing small things, or leaving people alone, or
Right.
being, going about your day. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing that, not everybody's in that position. I mean, my family's been in really, really hard financial hardship, and there were things where we made just enough to not qualify for anything, but very far below of when we actually needed things. And it's, we figured it out in a variety of different ways, but it's that stuff takes work, and I think that goes back to the thing I was saying before about how, this has more value because there's work associated with it. But just like you said, even with the heating piece, okay, well, what do you need to do? Okay, it's not like you're just sitting there on your day and you get a little message in your inbox that says, hey, cool, you have free heat now. It's you have to gather all the material, talk with other people, maybe get denied a few times before you get access to it. Write these things up, make sure the thing is written correctly. I mean, how many times have we had conversations with us or with other people where it's like, well, I had to do this process again for the 5th time in the row before I actually got the thing. That's work. So why are people not deserving of the thing that they get from doing that work?
Exactly. Yeah. Not to mention that every person has the right to these programs. It's not just me who has a right to these programs. Like, when something inevitably happens to you, you also have the right to these programs, because
Exactly.
right, you're not immune
Yeah.
to problems.
What?
There was a day when I thought I wasn't going to have problems and would have a
Different
life.
life.
I was just like, goodness, I was like, what are the words that I use? Like, productive, fulfilling. I'm like, my life is productive and fulfilling. Like, I don't know how to explain this to you without using words that I don't want to use, because because I do like my life. I like it quite a lot, actually. And so I don't want to say things like, oh yeah, I thought I would have a productive life. No, I thought I would have a different life than I have today.
Yeah.
I do love my life. It is productive. It is fulfilling. My niece, who was just here, was like, oh, I thought you'd kind of sit around on the couch all day because
my God.
But she wasn't trying to be mean. She was like, you have so much work, like, you can't keep up. And I was like, exactly. I have so much work I can't keep up.
Like when something, like someone comes to that realization of something, and it's like something you've been saying the whole time, and you're like, wow, that is a good idea that you have had. Yes.
Like, thank you for noticing.
Very interesting.
The thing that I have been saying for the last 10 years. Yeah. Like, I'm not allowed to be paid. That does not mean that I don't work my ass off.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, and I feel like that's, people listening to this I would want people to, think about that as you're kind of coming to the end of the year with this, and you're doing your things, and you're around your family, and you're maybe able to take that time off or whatever. I mean, that's realizing that the variety of things that we all have are different levels of privilege and different levels of things that we have to deal with that other people may or may not have. And it's not to oversimplify it, but there's a lot of milieu, right? That there's a lot of messiness and fuzziness in the way these things look. It's not just one person taking from something else. It's not just you giving something to someone else. There's a lot of factors and variables and life instances that go into that ripple out. And I think at this time of year, I'm more and more cognizant of that. There's a term for it, sonder, that people around you have lives just as complicated, if not more, than your own. And I think maybe reflecting on that, at least for me, is something that's been really powerful this past year of, like, where do you come from, where you came from, where you're going, who you interacted with, and kind of celebrating that complicatedness of, cool, we made it here. Now what?
Yeah. And I think, having inclusive holidays doesn't just mean, the difference between Christmas and Kwanzaa. It means like looking at all of these things and being like, oh, yeah, how do I include you and your experience? And the first step in that is looking at you and learning your experience and understanding, listening, being like, oh, I hear you.
Yeah.
In a deeper way, not in a like, it goes in my ear, it goes out my ear, or I think I know better than you, but in a way where like, I respect and honor your story. Yeah.
And sometimes it is just listening, right? Like there doesn't have to be a solution or an endpoint,
I mean, we like solutions and endpoints, but also they don't come with finger snaps. So
Exactly.
It can oftentimes, yes, be just listening. Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious too. I mean, for whoever's listening as well, I want to know, I mean, what are other people's traditions and what do they feel at this time of year, and what does this kind of bring up, and what are ways that people kind of build community? It's kind of a 3-part question.
What I want to know is these 17 things.
Yeah, exactly. Here's these weighted metrics. That's the academic showing through me again. How do I turn that off?
He can't stop. He won't stop.
He won't stop. I don't even know I'm doing it anymore. Jesus. Dr. Overthink. That's what they call me.
In other news, look out for our upcoming episodes. We want to talk about how to be an ally in 2025 because we do think that life is at quite a point. So,
and I think that I'm sure this phrase pops up every time, but now more than ever, right? I think building that community and moving forward in a way that makes sense to create those environments of success and safety for people is even more apparent now. Again,
yes.
4 years later.
Very true. Yes.
Yeah.
And we have some great guests coming on in the new year to start us off. We have Jae-Jin Pak, who has done amazing work in Illinois. We are super excited about that. We have Dom Kelly from New Disabled South coming on to talk to us about so much fantastic stuff.
So much. Oh my gosh. That episode, we're like, here's how a political situation works and how to mobilize people. Here's how personal life went. Here's what grief and loss looks like. We covered so many different things. Yeah, we had Dr. Heather Stone-Woodis. We have so many different people. So
we have so much
excited.
Good stuff. So much good stuff.
Yeah, so to end on a high note, I'm very happy where this podcast has gone this past year. I mean, just so many things have happened, and I think both of us kind of didn't expect this to happen. Like to be, we're like, oh yeah, maybe we'll talk to a couple people, we'll put out an episode every once in a while, and now it's like, here's 25. This year is going to be 15 episodes at the end of it.
Yeah, and it's wild.
How did we get here? Oh my gosh!
It's been phenomenal. I'm so excited. So many people have reached out, and please keep doing so. We are happy to have more stories on, and we are working to build the GAIN network and to get more and more people connected. That is coming soon. So much fabulosity there. We have so much good stuff. Merchandising coming out. Our new affiliates and so many great things. Lunadesk, we're so excited about working with Lunadesk. So many awesome things. So
absolutely,
we are just thrilled with how this year has gone, and we are so looking forward to the next, and we are so grateful for all of you that have come along on this journey with us.
2025 is going to be our year, and to echo what Christy said, I'm so thankful for everybody just listening to this and caring enough that they want to hear us ramble about things, but also, that this is not just about those pieces, but also are genuinely interested in seeing what these things are. And I hope that we can continue to provide at least a model with whatever feedback we have with that to show people that like these conversations can happen. It's okay. Like we don't have to fear these things. And I hope that in 2025, I mean, that only grows and we can bring more people in and bring more people with disabilities into the fold and really push this information out there in a way that makes sense. So Christy, thank you for being our fearless leader. Pushing us on here. I feel like I'm the guy in the background going, you got this.
I mean, you usually are because I'm freaking out. That's why you have to, because you're like, yeah, someone has to tell me, like, it's going to be okay. You got this.
It's okay. I mean, how many times have you done that for me, though, too? Like,
I guess that is also true. I'm
just overwhelmed and crying. How do I get out of this? And you're like, no, it's cool.
It'll be fine.
Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
No.
Wow. To a fine year. Happy 2024. Yes. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yes. Yay!
Yay!
Oh. It's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling. Full circle, folks. Full circle. As hosts of the Disability Tangent podcast, we love hearing from our listeners. Your thoughts, feedback, and questions are what keep our podcast going and growing.
So if you've been inspired, moved, or even challenged by anything you've heard on our show, we want to hear from you. Share your stories, your insights, and your questions with us by emailing disabilitytangent@gmail.com.
Whether you're sharing a personal story, suggesting a topic for a future episode, or simply want to say hello, we're here and ready to listen.
So don't be shy. Drop us an email at disabilitytangent@gmail.com and let's keep the conversation going.
That's all for today, folks. Until next time, remember to stay engaged, stay curious, and above all, stay connected. Thank you for listening.